My Hijrah journey personally started shortly after my embracing of Islam. As a young teenager, I wanted to live only with the Muslims. I saw that the society was contrary to my beliefs as a Muslim. So when I got married and I had a few children, from the time I intended to make Hijrah to the time we actually left was about 4 years. And my spouse and I, with our few children, we left and came to Egypt. I've been consistently living in the Muslim world for over 23 years. I've had 7 more children born in the Muslim world, and we lived in 4 different Muslim countries. So I wanted to advise the sisters with some brutally honest advice from what I've seen over this period of time. Number 1, lower your expectations, but not your standards. What I mean by this is that I've heard so many sisters, this is before they made Hijrah, after they've made istikhara, they've consulted me. And one of the main concerns is that they feel that they'll lose a quality of life to whatever country it is. It doesn't even matter which country. It's that by default they believe, now it's not a belief, it's really a subconscious fear that they'll have to live in substandard conditions, that they'll have to give up too much of their life that they're used to in order to adapt to a new country. The reality is that you can find whatever type of living situation you want, wherever you live. In the Muslim world, I've seen it in the 4 countries I've lived in, it's the exact same thing. Now, this is for people who haven't been in the Muslim world yet. They intended to make Hijrah. What are the things that are going to make you comfortable living with the idea of living in another country that happens to be in the Muslim world? So, although each Muslim country is different, the thing that remains the same is that each country will definitely have options. So for example, you may not want to live in a city, like in a crowded city, but you also don't want to live in a very rural place that's very isolated. So you can find something like in the middle that suits your nature. You have to understand what you're specifically looking for, and of course ask Allah to give you everything that you're looking for and be very, very specific. Likewise, I would say for standards as far as food, of course, I'm not saying that food is the most important aspect. However, of course, it's because we're women and because we're in the house more, taking care of our families. And by default, food is one of the most common expenses that you'll have to pay for. In general, I mean, rent, food is the most maybe even more expensive than rent sometimes is food. And you have more control over how you live within your means when you're buying food. I think culturally we're used to certain things. Anybody's culture, they want to eat what they're used to eating, what they grew up eating. I would highly advise any sister, whether she's married, whether she's unmarried, whether she's divorced, whether she's a widow, whether she's married in polygyny, whether she's, has children or not, to definitely learn how to cook if she doesn't already know, and to teach her children if she has children. But I've seen people actually have to leave, or they feel that they have to leave. They had this situation in which they ran out of money. But when you look into the deeper reason of why they ran out of money, is because they were spending so much money, eating out. You're getting sick sometimes. You have to run to the medical, facilities to get treatments and stuff like this. Buying, for example, imported items a lot, specifically in food, and specifically if you have a family, especially a large one. I have a large family. This is not actually practical. And if you want to maintain your Hijrah, it's definitely not practical, because you want to be able to stretch your money as far as you can without compromising your standards. It doesn't mean that you have to be extremely frugal, that you have to only eat, what you're not used to. But it does help if you have the basic skill of cooking. And I mean basic foods such as salads, soups, stews. You can keep a variety of what you're used to, like especially of those of us coming from the West, where we're very used to diverse choices in what we eat. You can still have some of the same foods that you like. You may have to do different things to get it. You may have to ask somebody to bring it. You may have to order it online. You may have to find local people who know where to find these things. You may have to communicate more with the Muhajir community in the country that you choose to move to, which is alhamdulillah, it's not hard to do because in many countries, people start to stick together more when they share a common experience. So the common experience, regardless of whatever country you come from, is that you've all come to the same country to live in the Muslim world for the sake of Allah. Another point I wanted to mention about not lowering your standards for the society that you go to live in, whatever Muslim country it is, again, do not lower your standards, your personal standards, for how you treat people, especially as a Muslim. Perhaps you see that you might expect, for example, in my situation, I expected a different caliber of manners and character when I first came to the Muslim world that didn't exist in reality. I don't know why I expected every last person, because I was just under the impression, okay, well, Muslims in general have a high level of character, manners, things like this. But the reality is that, of course, not every single person who is a Muslim has that, because people are people wherever they are, right? So the thing is, but still in the same note, is to not lower your personal standards, regardless of wherever you are, because at the end of the day, we're all Muslim. So whatever manners and character we have, we always try to improve that, regardless of who is around us, regardless of what the standards are for a specific society even. We still have to, increase ourselves in our character. This one is not necessarily an advice, but it's something that the sisters definitely need to know and understand. There is no welfare, there is no WIC, there is no food stamps, there is no EBT cards, there's no, rent assistance. Everything that you buy is going to be from your own earnings, from your own pocket. Don't get used to the idea of a possible handout. Of course, alhamdulillah, I've seen so many examples. I've been a part of situations in which there have been emergencies in the community. We didn't even have to ask. Allah He sent down the provisions for us to be able, as a community, help each other. And this is a beautiful blessing, but it's something that is not, we can't depend on it. Because of this lack of dependence on this type of assistance, it builds a strength of resilience upon Allah, a complete reliance upon Allah, and of course taking the means in order to help ourselves and to be able to help other people in the community. But I have to mention it because I've seen so many sisters who are not married as well. We've seen brothers who are not married, who have children, and they're single fathers, and they're raising their children. Same with the sisters. They're trying to nurture and raise these Muslim children in the Muslim world. And that is a commendable thing. Alhamdulillah. The thing is that sometimes they don't know that people they don't have access to this type of aid. It may be a hard pill to swallow for some, but the reality is that we don't have these things set up. Of course, some Muslim countries may have something like this for the immigrants, or the Muslims who come to live there. But in general, it's not something that is common or that it should be expected. Of course, we know, that in Islam, that the upper hand is better than the lower hand, and we should try to take the means to get the risk that Allah has put for us. And of course, we know that it's not only pertaining to, money. Here's another piece of brutally honest advice for sisters who make hijrah. So to get right to it, I would say that the masajid and the musalla are praying places. They are for salah. Sometimes there's classes, but they are not in general, I'm going to repeat that. In general, they are not by default Islamic centers. So what I mean is that some of us can feel disheartened, especially those of us coming from the US and from even Canada, the UK, other Western countries who have a minority Muslim population that's very strong. They have activities, they have classes on a regular basis, they're involved in volunteer services, there are places where you can meet other Muslims, there are places where you can perhaps find a spouse. There's places where you can perhaps find a job. There's, that's the place for everything. You can have iftar there. You can have suhoor there. But in the Muslim world, and not all, because this is a general for Muslim countries, but some Muslim countries are more isolated for the women than other places. So, for example, a sister asked me, do the women, or can the women, do they go to pray Tarawih? And there was more than one. They asked me this, and they haven't been in the Muslim world. So they wanted to know, how is this aspect of community? How can they be involved in a community when they come here? They were under the impression that the community is already here, that it's already functioning, that you can find all of the things that I named about the masajid in the West. However, the reality is not like that. I experienced it myself. When I first came here, I was under the impression, I don't know where I got this impression, I just assumed that it would be like what I was used to, or that it would be even better than what I was used to, because I assumed that because it's a Muslim country, that, we'll just, there will be an Islamic center in all of its full, aspects of that, as we experienced in the West. It's different here, but it can be that you have some masajid that don't particularly cater to the women or to the sisters, and then you have some which do, in the same country. So it's not that it's necessarily the country, it may be a cultural issue. So for example, in Egypt, in general, I would say the women do attend the masajid. They can pray the 5 daily prayers. They can pray Jumu'ah if they want to. They can go to Tarawih. They can go to the Eid prayer. They can come to classes that may be there. It's not a problem. In general, these are accommodating. But as far as the community center, this is not common. What we've been able to do and see, in other, countries, is that the Muslims who immigrate to these Muslim lands by connecting with each other, by joining the groups, getting to meet each other in person, organizing events, inviting people to your home, getting to know each other. This is how we've been able to build community from the ground up. So I would highly advise that sisters understand this reality, so they don't expect that it's going to be the same as what they had in the West. And in some cases, depending on where you go in the Muslim world, you might find it to be better, for the community aspects, getting together and doing activities with the local people, getting together and doing activities, fun activities, religious activities, learning activities with the other Muhajir in your community. These are the main points I wanted to get across in this video. Again, if you have any concerns or any comments, please, put it in the comment section, or you can email us, and inshallah we'll make more videos like this to benefit the community, especially from the sisters' point of view. Alhamdulillah, we've created a free online Make Hijrah community just for us sisters. You'll find practical resources, sisterhood, guidance on what to expect, and tips on how to sustain your Hijrah. Hit the link, join now, and I'll see you there, inshallah.